All right. Well, this is the brand of culture. I am Jazare Allen Lord, founder of True to Size Agency, also your women's advocate icon for the Black Footwear Forum. See you on stage tomorrow. And I want to start by allowing them to introduce themselves. So we will start with AJ. Your name and title, please, sir.
My name is Alexander John. I am creative director and designer at Alexander John Design.
Afternoon, John Wiggins, Vice President, Organizational Culture, Inclusion, and Impact for the Toronto Raptors.
I'm Sharice Thornhill Golson, Design Director of Design Education and Growth at Adidas and Seed.
What up, good people?
Yeah.
My name is Chris Wright, and I lead Jordan Footwear, the team in the business at Jordan Brand.
Yes, and amazing panel today, amazing panel, and we're going to be talking about some touchy subjects that we hope we can get through today, but I think it's really important that we have honest conversation, not only amongst each other, but I'm sure we're being streamed and that the things that we're saying today definitely are felt, heard, and received so that we can go back to our individual offices and create the change that's necessary. We're going to jump right into it. Many of us have recognized Black culture as the archetype of cool. And as many brands have noted, as many of us know, Black culture, Black people are the originators, the archetype of streetwear and sneaker culture. And how does that popularity, I think what we've seen over the past 4 years, how does the popularity of Black culture play a role in shaping both consumer behavior, but also their preferences in such a diverse and globalized world? It's a heavy question, but we'll start with John.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
And I'm going to pick up where Aster left off because we have been the architect, engineers, gatekeeper. When we say something's cool, it's cool. We have been curating what's cool and popular for centuries, right? Like when you take music, for instance. If it's not hip hop and it's not reggae and it's not Afro beats and it's not R&B and it's not jazz, we've been telling people for centuries what to listen to and what music is great. And they've been listening to that. And then consumers have gone to buy 8 tracks and records and tapes and CDs, and now they're streaming it. That's because of us. We created that music all on our own origins. Even the sneaker culture, when we really think about it, we may not have been the ones designing the sneakers, although after Pencil Lewis is done, I'm sure we will be going on to the future. But we're the ones that were showing people what it looks like. We styled those shoes. We're the ones that said, this is how you're supposed to wear it. And that just comes from our own origins of your mom wasn't going to buy you another pair of shoes anytime soon, so you better take care of them. But we got to show people what it looks like. We've been originating these styles and driving consumers to say, okay, well, we want to look like that. And if we weren't the ones creating it, then you better believe we were the ones making it popular. We were driving consumers. When you look at what Rihanna has done with Fenty, Maybelline and Revlon were around for a very long time. But truthfully, she was the one that said, hey, look, like if you don't really start addressing what's going on with people with melanin in their skin, and she turned that into $1 billion business, right? And even when I think about basketball, we weren't the first ones to dunk. But you better believe you saw what we were doing when we started flying through the sky and putting it through our legs and behind our back and making it look like something that everybody wanted to come buy a ticket for, or they wanted to come in and be a basketball player when it looks for. So I just think we've been saying what's cool and what's not cool for a very, very long time as the gatekeepers. And I'll kind of end it with here. You might see the Toronto Raptors come out with a new jersey design anytime soon in the next week or so. There's mixed emotions on whether or not it's good. But we're going to give it to probably the most popular Black voice in Canada and around the globe right now. And if he says it's cool, everyone's going to want to buy it. So just saying.
And Chris?
I love this question. It's funny, I think about it a lot every day. I think you referenced popularity. It's funny, when I think about it, I don't think about just popularity in pop culture. I think about mass appeal. And I think about the impact that Black culture has had literally around the world, whether it's Germany, whether it's Roppongi in Japan. It's absolutely incredible. The most recent one that we've probably all been paying attention to over the last couple of weeks on Saturday is what Prime is doing in Colorado. An amazing, amazing level of influence in literally 2 weeks on the job. Like, Let's give it up for him.
Amen.
But that's a sheer example of what our impact is at both the macro level of culture and the micro level of culture. We're literally always at the center of it, which is a beautiful thing.
Amazing. And I want to go to Sharice. I know that you do a lot of work in this space, but in what ways have you observed brands successfully embrace cultural diversity and inclusivity to connect with their consumers authentically? Obviously, with
Yeah.
Seed.
For sure. We are the creators, so we're creating now. And again, because of Pencil, there's going to be more and more of us in the industry, so I'll start there. But we know that the product is only as great as the people behind it and who are creating it. And so from a Seed perspective, the work that we're doing to create opportunities for more women of color to become footwear designers.
Can you pause for a shout out to the
Sure.
Seed girls, my Seed
Yeah,
babies
they're
who are
here.
here, by the way. But
Yeah.
can you explain to those who don't know what Seed is?
SEED stands for School for Experiential Education and Design. So first of its kind. Jessica's out here somewhere, our founder of the program. And, you know, SEED is something that I wish existed when I was in school. I went to school just right up the street. And I wish it existed for my friends and I, the ones who weren't able to attend a university like this. And many of them got left behind. So SEED is a place now where women from every walk of life who always wanted to be footwear designers or who just found out about it yesterday have an opportunity to come into the brand, be upskilled, learn, have a community of other women of color around them to help make them successful, and then walk into a full-time role within the brand. So that's the big piece about it. But again, I think the product itself, the stories that we choose to tell, it has to come from an authentic place. We've seen so many faux pas within our industry where we have to ask who was actually behind, who created this, and who was and was not in the room. So the work that we're doing to make sure that those stories are real and there are real people of color who have lived those lives are behind the product and telling those stories. I think the brands are taking notice and that the product is also resonant. So that's the big part of it, just having more of us actually at the table creating that product.
I love that. And John?
Yeah, I'll just say, as involved as we are with culture and diversity, you've got to include it in everything you're doing right now. The consumer wants to see it. Like you said, the people behind the scenes want to see it. Your staff and your employees want to see it. And you're putting your company or your organization at a disadvantage if you're not including diversity and culture into everything you do. And it's really just where things are going moving forward. I'm sure all of you have been to a basketball game or some sporting event, and there's a theme in the background, but we're all starting to look differently at what kind of themes we have because some of them are traditional and they're bland and they're like it really just doesn't connect with people authentically, like you mentioned. We decided to host a Caribbean Heritage Night at our game. It is arguably the most successful game we've had in the last 5 years because we changed the food in the concession stands, we changed the retail, the music was bumping with soca and reggae all night. Even our players came and said the vibe was different. If you're not tapping into culture and relevancy of culture within your organization, then basically you're going to get left behind.
Well, we're going to go a little deeper into those maybe unsavory stories. I want to go to you, AJ. We've seen brands repeatedly struggle with telling resonant and authentic Black stories. Do you think, which I think we all know, yes, but do you think that the consumer can tell when the story isn't true, specifically to our culture? And if so, how can they productively, I use the word productive very, very clearly. How can they productively share their voice to hold brands accountable?
I think that, yes, the answer is yes. A lot of people actually hit me up and they share the stories and they ask the questions, you know, who was behind this? So they know. We're dealing with an era of smart consumers. I think before when we were just magazines and we didn't have phones in our hands, you know, it's easy to think everything is cool. But once you can do the research, most of us are makers now. We're creating things. You could really call BS on a lot of things that come out. And so I've had people do it ugly where, you know, they're posting and it's abrasive. But I think the most successful approach would be to actually use the mighty pen, you know, write a letter, get in touch with the marketing person, get in touch with the D&I person, and actually share a genuine concern because they're the ones that can make that change. You're not going to make the change from your social media page. It's not going to happen. You might get blocked, you know, but other than that, like to successfully and productively do it, you actually have to use the power of words, which, you know, communication is the key to getting what you want. Negotiations are just a bunch of words, you know, and you're trying to get what you want through that. And so I think the best way is just talk to the people that actually can do something about it instead of making a bunch of what could seem like a bunch of noise and fall on deaf ears.
And I've never been afraid of the abrasive approach. I think abrasive sometimes is necessary. I think abrasive without solution
Right.
is super problematic. And so I think there's one thing to be complaining into the void, and then another thing to say, here are 3 active solutions we can walk towards right now. And here are the pain points, and here are the solutions. And offering both, I think, in the conversation is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
Anybody else want to jump on that one? I think when it comes to, I think we're seeing a lot better stories for sure right now. I love some of this. I mean, wearing one now. Where's Bima? Shout out to Bima. His shoe comes out on the 30th. Claim a seat. He'll be on the stage tomorrow. I'm wearing his products. I think that there are plenty of amazing stories that are being told, and I think a lot of the times we don't know what the solutions are. But to your point, which I love what you said, like a lot of us are makers now, and the consumer has never been more educated. Like I can't remember being, 1991, 92 maybe, like I didn't have all this visibility into who was making my product, what the team was on my product, the things that sometimes the brands are amplifying even in the sales process. And so I think educating, if you are going to do the due diligence on the colorway and the year the shoe came out, then also do the due diligence on how to create solutions
Yes.
for our people in this business. Moving on, I think the concept of cultural capital, which is kind of the thematic oversight of the conference, but the concept of cultural capital suggests that certain cultural elements, like sneakers, can confer status, therefore influencing consumer behavior. How can brands utilize cultural capital responsibly and ethically? Charisse.
I just want to say that I think a lot of times we talk about brands like there aren't people behind the brands. Like there are real people in the rooms making the decisions, and many of them are in this room. It's us. We are the them we're always talking about, and we have influence in those spaces, and we have to also assume our position, make sure that the stories that we're telling are real, and also making sure that they're stories that we should tell. You know, is this advancing the culture? Is this taking us a step back? That's a
real.
big one. There's so many stories that I don't think are vetted enough, that we don't invite people who are actually living those lives in to co-create with us. And I think we have to hold ourselves accountable, especially those of us in this room. We should partner. We should be working together, or at least self-checking to make sure that, oh, is this a story we should tell, or is this color something that matters or not? And I think, there's an opportunity to invite more people into our process and make sure that we are being ethical in the stories we choose to tell. And then some stories just should not be told, and they should just be left where they are. And how do we move forward and advance our culture forward in the most positive light?
No, I think it's interesting you say that, because my first question is like, then who decides, right? What's ethical? Like, is there a board of people that are going to like, this is a right story to tell. This is not but I think developing infrastructure for those conversations to exist is just as important as the conversation themselves. Speaking of meaningful collaborations, I want to go to you, Chris, and talk about influencer partnership and the rise of influencer marketing. There's such a diverse bank of talent that brands are partnering with to create UGC, user-generated content, in an effort to get closer to more authentic Black stories. How can brands partner with these creators of color in a more meaningful way, as opposed to maybe just handing them a brief and a script?
That's a great question. The one thing that I would say every collaboration needs to start with, it needs to start with a value system. So on the brand side and the partner side, if the values aren't lining up, that's not a good fit. So it's never going to work in that manner. So if you're focusing on making sure that the values are lining up, then you're starting from a solid place right there. And then from there, I think it's really just all about making sure that you're not handcuffing people. Like the reference of handing somebody a brief, you're kind of telling somebody what to do. In reality, the reason that you bring these voices into your organization, these voices into your brands, is because you want to make sure that they're truly representing the communities they're coming from, and they're bringing the authentic voices of the communities that can come into partnership and start to bring things to those communities that will resonate. But if you're not getting after it in that manner, that's where things get a little choppy for folks.
No, I agree. And I was having a conversation with Talks with TJ. She's here somewhere, but we were talking about this question, and she said the first thing that they could do is trust me because they brought me in. So why are you giving me a brief if you're trusting my voice to tell the story? And so I think that that is one of the biggest things I think in influencer partnership for me. When I worked with Reebok, the best thing that they could ever did with me was say, like, say whatever you want. Whether you like it or not, you know, like we want your honest opinion, we want your truth, and if you love it, it matters to people just as much as when you say you don't love it. And so I think being able to kind of vet out the authenticity, I hate this word right now, but maybe the truth telling of the partner as well is super important when it comes to aligning those value systems. Moving further into stories, I want to go to you, John. What role does storytelling play when it comes to connecting brands with consumers based on shared cultural experiences or identities, which I think you touched on a little bit with the night that you recently held?
Yeah, and I think we're weaving in a common theme, which is authenticity, right? Your consumer, our fans, like they want to see themselves represented in your organization. They want to see themselves represented in your product or your service. And when you are telling your story, if they don't see themselves there, then why would they follow you, buy, show up, get a ticket? It doesn't make any sense. So a lot of times, especially from a community like Toronto where we're so diverse, we got to be super intentional about making sure that the stories we're telling, even if it's about our players, it connects to all of the different fans that we have, the inclusiveness that we need to make sure we bring people in. And that happens through our stories. It happens through our social channels. It happens through our broadcast. It happens through our streams. We've got to be cognizant of who we are speaking to when we're telling these stories and making sure that the story relates to them and that it authentically connects to them so that they feel like they're a part of us. A lot of what we're always saying is we want you to be a part of Raptor Nation, but this is a consumer base now that is going to call you out, or they're going to research what you're saying because they are informed and educated to the point we were talking about earlier. And if in that quick TikTok search or Instagram or Google search, they don't see it, they're on to the next. They'll go follow another team, and we don't want that. So our story has to be relevant to what's going on in our market.
Love that. Sharice?
I mean, I was just in Carabana just there a few weeks ago. And, you know, we're growing our presence in that space as well.
That's that Grady.
Yeah, we did. But again, a lot of our students have a Caribbean background. I do as well. Many of us, you know, may have grown up playing mass all our lives, but we never knew why. Like, what is that true story behind Carnival and Caribbean Carnival? And it is a story of emancipation and freedom. And so we are actually building a collection around that story we're taking to market next year. So we're excited to bring that about. But also, we worked with a Caribbean fashion designer, Anya Young-Chi, to bring that to life. So again, I think we're all kind of talking about the same thing, is that we can't create in a vacuum. We can have a great story. Those of us that are inside the brand, it's our job to advocate for those stories, but we shouldn't tell it on our own. We should invite others from those communities to come in and co-create with us and then amplify it even further. But storytelling is everything. Every product should have a story, and that's what we teach our students. If it doesn't,
And that's a big
it doesn't matter.
That's a big conversation right now, right? Like, does every product need a story? But I agree. Like,
Should.
it should. Every product should have a story. That leads me into my kind of lighter question. But I want to start with you, AJ. What do you think the tenets are of a strong story?
I think that you got to have a connection. You know, to me, everything that I do is connected to a moment in time that I can share with you authentically. And I want to actually I want to show you where we're alike. Even though we didn't grow up in the same place, this is what it was like when I used to open the cereal box. You know, this is so whatever story I'm telling, I think that's one of the most strongest things. It's like, is it authentic? Is it you? Or can you find yourself in that story? And where are you connecting with that other person on the other side and saying, this is you too? You know, you grew up like this. So I'm not going to take them all. Pass on.
I think, when we think about strong stories, though, for me, I don't have like a big paragraph to describe it. Like if it hits me in the gut, though,
Yeah.
like when I open that box and it's like, oh, okay, I felt that. For me, that the strong stories to what you said. Like, can I see myself in this?
Right.
And how many other people can also see themselves in this? Moving, a little bit back onto that side, which is I think the question that we all want to know today, how can the culture protect itself from those who seek to exploit it? I know, I thought. They gave me this one for a reason, y'all.
So I gotta go back to it starts with us. Whoever that creator is, you made that decision. You signed on that line. What did you sign up for? I've had many collabs that I've passed on because it wasn't true. And so my first thing in going into a brand is I tell them, what my deal is. I want to tell true stories. That's what I signed up to do. So if we're not here to do that, and that can be through the product, and then I learned eventually I needed to actually have access to how it was actually marketed. Because that's where, you can go in and the true story is in the product, but then the marketing falls flat.
Yep.
And you
And the
realize,
PR. And
the
there's
PR.
so many different pieces to connect.
By the time it gets to PR, your name ain't even mentioned in it. So I had to go in and be honest with myself. Am I communicating what I want so they understand what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do? And then from there, that's where, we can have an agreement and we can sign that paper. But it starts with us. Exploitation is something that happens to everybody. It's unfortunate, but they look to make better than the person they're collaborating with. That's the goal, right? They make more money than you do. But are you protecting yourself and in turn protecting the person that's coming behind you? Because a lot of times, some of us are the first to go through the door. And however you leave that door, whether it's a crack in it or whether you bust it wide open, the next person has to come through that space. So I aim as a collaborator to make it safe by saying, these are my questions. This is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not willing to do. So that way, they know, don't try this with the next person because this is how we're thinking now. So
And a lot of people aren't willing to stand on that, though, because they see, I don't know, the sneaker collab dangling in their face or $10,000 dangling in their face. But I think the long-term effects of being able to not only advocate for yourself, but advocate for other people who look like you, to your point, coming through the door with you or behind you, is exceptionally important. Like you're really hurting yourself and everybody else,
and
selling yourself short.
When you take that money, whatever that is, you'll learn that wasn't even enough.
No.
So you learn
So
that
it was not nearly enough.
you learn that wasn't enough. You sold yourself short, and now you've created a narrative that will settle. And so for me, it's been important to say, listen, no, I've said no to 6 figures, and I needed it.
Knowing your worth, I think, also helps with the stopping the exploitation. Like, understand what the rate is for that. Understand what the salary band is for that. Understand what a collaboration or what people are paying for reels today. Understand that, and understand that you're worth it, so that you don't get these little freebie deals, and because that's how you're taking 10 people take a freebie deal. It's really messing the market up for everybody.
Mark it up for everybody. Absolutely.
All right, we have 9 minutes or so left, so I want to open it up for Q&A. I have one question left. Okay, Bima, I see you. Before we move into it, but I'm not sure where they are collecting people for the mic, but we will be opening up for Q&A. Last question, what do we hope for the future of Black storytelling in footwear? Anybody?
I'll start. For me, it's ownership, collaboration, and economic stability. I think to your point, when we are stable, we can say no to things. I think oftentimes we're in situations where we are unstable and we're probably forced into taking things that doesn't help or support what we're trying to do. I think becoming more stable in that way frees us up to pick and choose, ownership, owning our own stories, learning how to do that. And then partnership. Why don't we partner enough in our community? I mean, there's a wealth of knowledge in this room. There's amazing things we could do together if we just focus on working together. Yeah.
I'll jump in. representation. If there's more representation, like in all of these buildings and all of these organizations, like sky's the limit. I want to come back to the tenant question as well, with storytelling. The interesting thing I've learned in the time I've been in this business is that any product you're doing, it always starts with the insight. The insight is derived from what problem you're trying to solve, which ultimately becomes the story you're trying to tell when you're trying to take it to the commercial level and put it in front of consumers. So like insights is absolutely the thing that's informing the stories that should be told, because that's what actually is the impetus for how we're creating these products.
I think this is the future right here. Truthfully, like a big shout out to Dr. Dwayne Edwards for what he's
Yes.
doing. Truthfully, and
Where is he at?
I didn't come this weekend just to be a speaker. I'm here for the whole weekend to really take this in. This
I
is
know,
a
AJ said
vision
he's at school this
that
weekend.
we need to see that, like, the Black community can now take on an advanced design. Like, let's go past just shoes for a second. Like, this could, I don't know how many people had a chance to tour the building, but like, this is something special. And to your point around partnership, we got to support it.
Yeah.
Like, I sent kids down from Toronto through the Raptors here to be a part of this because I want to see it be successful. Like, the future is right now.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love that.
I would like to, I mean, y'all covered everything, but I would like to expound on, a space that I'm in and its collaboration. I would love to see the future of this community with more superstar collabs. Like, so, and what I mean is, like, it's like something as simple as Taco Bell collaborating with Doritos. It just made sense. It's like two big brands, you know what I mean? Just, they did that nacho taco, I was like, yes. You know what I mean? So in our culture, we have, the big names, Joe Fresh Goods, you got Beamer, you have all these people. I want to see mashups like that, where it's like King Kong, Godzilla, you know what I mean? And I think that's going to create another level of energy for us, because what we're watching right now is the dwindling of the energy because of the watered down stories, and it's only us that's going to bring that energy back through fun and collaboration. So I would love to see a lot of just superstar mashups that you're just like, I can't believe that happened.
All right. We have questions.
Hello? Y'all hear me? Okay. So I appreciate the perspective that y'all shared on behalf of like different organizations, specifically, ones that are not of color. And so my question is just considering, the Black Footwear Forum, you have like events like CultureCon and shameless plug, Sneaker Week, which are Black-owned organizations that are for the culture, created by the culture. What do y'all think are like opportunities that are missing from, events that we're creating for ourselves or experiences that we're creating for ourselves that can, I don't want to say bypass because they're not a white-owned organization, it's like we don't have to educate them or, we don't have to educate ourselves. So what do y'all see that's like missing in those spaces? Something that BFF or other organizations can adopt and help shape that future?
Herb, I knew that was you.
I know.
I'll go back to something that Chris talked about was insight. I don't think that we tap into insights enough. I think we know that from a product creation standpoint, but I think that's an opportunity is really just thinking back to purpose, like why does Sneaker Week exist? And what are the values and tenets? And I think also thinking outside the box, what are the goals, like who are we focusing on? What do those people need? And I think there's an opportunity to expand from there. But I think just going back to those insights is key, and then telling those stories from there.
Yeah, most definitely starting with the pain point. I think like one of the bigger pain points I see that there's a severe lack of Black ownership is agency partners. I'm an agency owner, and it's very, very sad how many people do not look like me that are doing $500,000 product launches for brands, and they're often Black products with no Black people as the agency partners. So I think like strategists, shout out to the strategists in the space. I think that's like not the sexiest job, but to Chris's point, we need insight. It starts with the insights. I think a lot of times we want to start with like, what's the cool thing we can do at the end? And we forget about like we're trying to solve a problem. The product of beautiful product design is solving a problem. And so I would say that think about the problems that are local to you, regional to you, and then national to you, and what's the biggest one that you can go all in on and balls to the wall.
Hi, I'm Steven. First of all, shout out to all of you. Really, really great presentation. When we speak of culture, it's experienced, seen, felt so differently for each and every one of us. If you were to put it into words for you, what does culture mean to you, for you, in your words?
I'll take that one.
Go ahead, Chris.
It's funny. I'm gonna tell a quick story. I wasn't supposed to be here today, at least on stage. I was supposed to be in the crowd. I'm filling in for a colleague of mine, a good friend. His name is Charles Williams. This is probably like 5 years ago. He went to LA. He was doing an insights trip, and he had like, call it 8 to 10 influencers. And his story still resonates for me, and I like to tell it all the time because he asked that same question: what does culture mean to these guys? And it was a music producer out of Chicago. His name is No ID. Not sure if anybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
And when he asked the question, what does culture mean to you? He said, it means you were there. That shit resonated with me. Because I think about like growing up where I grew up and the eras I've been able to touch and the experiences I was able to have along that journey. If you take that same approach through your own filter and you start to put it through the cultural filter and cultural lens, like it's just amazing with everybody. Think of the wealth of culture that's in this room right here, right now.
Amen.
That's crazy.
Amen. I love that story. Ooh.
Yeah.
Bima, you gonna put your hand up
I
7
didn't think I
times
was gonna
before I
get
get
this
to you.
So my question is, when we think back to the time of 2020, it was a different time in culture, and it was a time where a lot of brands, in my opinion, became black overnight. And what I mean by that was that there were a lot of promises that were made to the black community, billion-dollar promises. And we saw a lot of performative things take place during that time, and I would venture to say that now we've started to see things move into a different direction. And so I guess my question would be, along the lines of what we talked about, how do we protect our culture? I think the other question would be, how do we protect ourselves against performative actions? And how do we hold folks accountable? Because we actually need this, right? But we need these things consistently over time, decades over time. And so my question would be, how do we leverage our influence inside and outside to hold that accountability to promises that were made?
I'm going to just say I got one short answer because I'm with you on that. I was watching the promises being made, but then I realized and what I witnessed was that the monies for some of the monies that were expelled were given to companies that made promises to teach us. So what I saw, I was like, oh, that's how it's happening. So, certain brands said, well, you give us money and we'll go into the communities and do these activations. It was almost like agencies, that are doing the work for the brands. And I realized I didn't have a platform to obtain this. So I then started saying, okay, I have to solve this problem. I have to build something that you can put that into, and then I can hold you accountable. Otherwise, I'm just going in and I'm, yelling at you for not doing what you're gonna do. It's gonna fall on deaf ears. So my thing was, let me now create something that you can actually fund and make, that thing that you have to, now I can hold your feet to the fire, so to speak.
The key word you mentioned that I'll answer in your question is the accountability piece. We've got a woven theme of accountable partnerships with what we're doing. And there was a lot of emotion in 2020, 2021, 2022, and that's what all these companies were responding with. And now that that emotion has dissipated, that they're starting to look at what's my return on investment here? How am I going to make money off of this? But we still have to hold them accountable to, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Raptors, if you want to partner with us, you've got to hold on to those commitments. We need to see all the things you're doing for diverse communities, marginalized people, historically neglected youth. we're not going to let you do that. You don't get to walk in our arena anymore and just put your name up on the billboard and get all those impressions. We will hold you accountable going forward. And I would just transcend that into our community, right? Like we just spoke about it. We talked about it and kicked it off by saying we are the ones that define what's cool. We are the ones that are setting popular culture. We are the ones that all of these brands are saying, tell us what we need to do to make money. Well, what you need to do, we're going to hold you accountable to every promise you had. Otherwise, you don't get access to us anymore.
I got a question for everybody. I love this theme of accountability. Think about how much influence is in this room and this kind of influence. Is everybody willing to hold organizations accountable with this?
Exactly.
This is real accountability right here.
We have a wrap it up sign on our.
Flashing, right?
It's now flashing at us. So I want to thank everyone on the panel for sure.
Thank
You guys for
you.
coming out and having this
Yes.
Thank you.
conversation. And thank y'all for hanging out with us. I believe there's one more session after this, and then we are headed to the mixer, I believe. So thank you all so much. All right.